The Rundown is brought to you by Commonwealth Brewery Limited.
Good evening. I'm Julian Reed, and this is The Rundown. I'm guest hosting for Clint Watson. Climate change, you've heard it time and time again, but what does it really mean, and what are all the elements about it? Well, tonight, we're going to talk about all things related to the environment, the science, the practical, all of it. My special guest is Dr. Rihanna Neely, who is the Director of Environmental Planning and Protection. You'll hear it all right after this.
We play just like your kids. We text just like your kids. We learn. We even cook. We take selfies. We have hobbies. And we love sports. In every way, we are just like everyone else and enjoy the same things and live our lives every day, just like you do. So if you happen to meet us, treat us just like everyone else. Because at the end of the day,
we're just like you.
Living life with Down syndrome is simply living. To learn more about Down syndrome, call 727-2105. This message is brought to you by the Grand Bahama Down Syndrome Society.
Hardware is the helpful place. Everything you need under one roof. From electrical, paint, plumbing, outdoor, barbecue, automotive, lawn and garden, pet supply, houseware, and seasons. Hurricane season is now here. So for all your hurricane needs, we have a 25% off bargain zone.
Hey, thanks. I would have given more stuff, but I didn't bring my money. I thought this was a club, and I thought everything was free. Finally know what it is now. Ace.
We're located on St. Albans Drive, West Bay Street. Open Monday to Saturdays from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and closed for lunch 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.
Welcome back. Climate change. You've heard it over and over and over again. Do you really understand what it is all about? And do you realize that there's so many other aspects about the environment? My special guest will give you so much information tonight that you'll enjoy it. She's Dr. Rihanna Neely, and she is the Director of Environmental Planning and Protection. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. We call it DEP. What does DEP do?
So the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection is responsible for everything environmental in the Bahamas. We regulate the full 100,000 square miles of Bahamian landscape and seascape. We're responsible for regulating development, environmental research, multilateral environmental agreements, the whole gamut. Anything that is environment, we're responsible.
And people always hear about these EIAs, the Environmental Impact Assessment. That's something you are controlling as well.
That is definitely one of the main things that we do. We passed the legislation of the Environmental Planning and Protection Act in 2019, and the Certificate of Environmental Clearance process, which governs the environmental impact assessment process, is one of the major things that came up in that legislation.
If you don't mind, break down what the process is. So, for example, I am an investor or a developer, and I want to do something in a special place in the Bahamas that might be a little fragile as far as the ecosystem is concerned. What do I have to do to actually get approval?
Okay, so in some instances, if the environment cannot sustain the actual development, the development is denied. So we would go through the process, and if it is determined that the risk do not outweigh the benefits, then we're unable to move forward. But if there are things that we can get around, we can mitigate the negative impacts, you would apply for a certificate of environmental clearance once you would have received a no objection from the Bahamas cabinet. No, we would want this project to proceed, and so the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection is the first step after that. You apply for a CEC, and
What's a CEC?
Certificate of Environmental Clearance, and we would advise you that based on the components of your project, if it is near the coastline, if you want to install a golf course, a mega hotel, a marina, anything like that, then you would need to get an environmental consultant. I would like to say that since 2019, we have a new sector of environmental consultancy in the Bahamas that is very much flourishing as a result of this legislation. If you want to do development in the Bahamas, you need to have an environmental consultant who would advise on what is necessary for you to work in the Bahamian environment.
And, well, you and I know each other for a long time, 20-something years. We have so many great scientists, like yourself. So most of the people who are doing these kinds of CECs, are they Bahamians?
Everyone that works in the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection as an environmental officer is a Bahamian. And we encourage all Bahamians to go and study science. In order to work with us, you need a minimum of a bachelor's degree in a related science. I have a PhD in environmental science. I'm the only one in the department with that for now. We have an officer that is working on her PhD right now, and we expect that she will return. But everybody else would have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree, and we're having a good time, actually, working to preserve and protect our environment.
Just out of interest, what was your thesis on?
My thesis, my dissertation, was actually on climate change risk. Yes, in the Bahamas. And so I collected quite a bit of data in the Bahamas from Bahamians, and I juxtaposed that with what we know is happening around the world, and to see the impacts of climate change on the Bahamas and how the Bahamas should address climate change.
Well, you have had your PhD for quite a while.
Yes, I don't want to date. I don't want to date myself.
No, I'm not trying to do that. But what I'm saying is, from the time you actually did your dissertation, have you seen a degradation or a worsening of factors in climate change since then?
We've definitely seen changes. We've seen marked changes with the level of our sea, of our oceans. We've seen high tides. We're also seeing, especially with these last round of hurricanes, the development of a storm from a tropical storm or a tropical depression into a major hurricane very quickly. So these are some of the things that would not be able to happen if climate change wasn't a factor. Because our oceans are now so hot, and we know that hurricanes feed on warm waters. These storms are really able to ramp up very quickly because of the energy that's in the ocean.
Wow. What can we do to actually sort of, is there anything we could do individually right now to sort of deal with climate change?
I do like to tell people, you know, that climate change is a global thing. And the Bahamas is a very small country. We know that the Bahamas emits about 0.01% of our greenhouse gas total to the planet. So if you think about that, then, you know, it doesn't make sense. Whatever we do, it won't have an impact. But all of the climate change things that we have been encouraging Bahamians to participate in are common sense initiatives. They would do well for your pocket, so they help you to reduce your energy usage, help you to build resilience when storms come. And so we don't look at it necessarily as a climate change plus, although they are, but these are common sense initiatives that will help you to live a better life and possibly decrease your cost of living.
Now, we know mangroves are very important as a defense.
Yes.
Right? And Bahamians historically or traditionally have been like, you go in and get your land and raise it.
Yes.
Not a good thing to do, right?
That is one of the worst things that you can do, especially now that we are having more rain, and we're having rain outside of the rainy season. We're also having more intense storms when they do come. So those mangroves act as a buffer between the land and the ocean. And so they hold water. they're usually very wet. And sometimes they're seasonally wet, but most times they're all the time wet. And if you fill that land in, you're removing the buffer between the water in the ocean and the dry land. And so when it rains, that water has no place to go. And if it was supposed to go in this wetland area that you have filled in, so what's going to happen now?
It goes right in your house.
It's going to go right in your house.
Wow.
And so you're going to cause a problem not only for yourself, but for your neighbors, for people who are trying to get past on the roads, because now you would have filled in a natural stormwater protection that now we have to go and engineer to be able to produce the same effect.
But let's be honest, right? The Bahamas is under sea level anyway, right?
Most of the Bahamas is within the mean sea level, yes.
Wow.
80%.
Wow. I mean, I saw a map of, I think, the Pinewood area in the 1970s, and then saw it about in the 20s, and it's like...
So Pinewood is one of those areas that's almost in a bowl. And bowls hold water, right? And so Pinewood was something that happened. We're looking to engineer our way out of it. But I think that we should, once you know better, you should do better. And we should not. There are people that we notice, and I hope we get a chance to speak about some of the amendments to our legislation about people that intentionally go and destroy the environment. But nobody should go and intentionally destroy the environment. We're looking and we're hoping that Bahamians become so educated and become so understanding of their environment that when they look at a wetland, they don't see that as bush. They don't see that as a wasted space. That is performing a function that we all need, and not just the individual.
So do you think it's deliberate, or is just not understanding, lack of information? What do you think it is?
Well, we have a task to make sure that the Bahamas is educated about environmental impacts. And so as we continue to do our jobs, we hope that more and more Bahamians will become educated. And so right now we're going to look at it as if we don't understand what the function of the space is. But that doesn't mean that ignorance is no excuse of the law. So if you're found doing something that you should not be doing, there is still an impact, there is still a fine, there is still a penalty for what it is that you're doing.
And how high or how much would you pay if you really violate something serious environmentally?
Under the new impacts, Julian, if you are in need of a certificate of environmental clearance and you do work without a certificate of environmental clearance, the fine for that is $20,000.
Do you think that's enough?
Well, that is not the end of it. So the spot fine is where we're able to issue the spot fine on the spot. And you need to pay that spot fine within 14 days, or court proceedings will ensue after that. Now, if there is damage that we need to repair, the government is still at liberty to take you to court for you to make good on whatever it is that you need to do, or to ensure that you fix the environment the way it was.
Does the law allow the government to reclaim land where it's being abused? Excuse me.
For us to take it back?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is something called eminent domain, and if the government has exercised this in the past, yes.
Good. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back, and we're going to talk a lot more about these things that Bahamians need to know about. Let's talk about how you should build after this.
Our company offers a simple philosophy, open hands. What do open hands mean? If you keep your hands closed, nothing comes in, nothing goes out. If you keep your hands open, a lot of things comes in, a lot of things goes out. We cannot expect to be a successful company without blessing our community and blessing our country.
My good friend and valued client, Dominic Stirrup, approached me following a meeting we had and told me of the idea that he had of feeding 10,000 Bahamians on Thanksgiving.
There was a lot of details to put together, had to figure out how to get it done. But at the end, it was worth it. At the end, it gave me a heart of gratitude to know that our company is reaching out to so many persons.
We invite you on a journey to witness an extraordinary chapter in the story of the Bahamas Striping Group of Companies, a tale of compassion, unity, and the true spirit of Thanksgiving.
Just what is it that you want to do? And we want to have a good time. We want to be free to do what we want to do.
I don't know, but there's all kinds of cars in the parking lot. You ain't even know where to park. Yeah, just don't park in the, look at this way. Like, you ain't get nowhere to go. Don't park in, just don't park in the handicap spot.
Yeah, that's handicap.
No, you can't park in the handicap spot.
I ain't gonna be that long. I ain't gonna be that long.
Handicap spot,
Boy, what's going on, dog?
I tell you we shouldn't park here now. This way park here,
I tell you we shouldn't park here. Don't get one of these things.
My bad big bro, and he got a sticker inside that say this mother. We gotta move. This is a handicap spot.
That's what we gotta move.
But we gotta move. We can move right now. Sorry.
Be considerate. Don't use disabled parking spaces without a decal in your vehicle. This message is brought to you by the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities.
Is the Little Caesars Stuffed Crust Pizza. Get more pizza for less money. Only $12. It's a whole new level of pizza with cheese stuffed crust so spectacular that there's nothing left.
Pizza.
A delicious pepperoni pizza with the crust stuffed with lots of cheese and brushed with butter and garlic flavor and sprinkled with Parmesan cheese. Hot and ready Thursday to Saturday between 4 and 8 for only $12. Simply irresistible. And only at Little Caesars.
Pizza.
Welcome back, my special guest, Dr. Rihanna Neely Murphy, who is an environmental specialist, but she also heads up the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection.
Yes.
How should we be building our homes? I remember back in the day, for example, you know the area they call the pond?
Yes.
Good. Now, my grandfather's home was there, and it was like kind of high, you know, on stilts. How should we be building our homes?
Really, when we should be expecting, as a result of climate change, a lot more flooding when it rains, as a result, as well of how we developed, how we have developed. So if you raise your property, or if you raise your foundation, raise your floor, that is going to only be beneficial to you. Mm-hmm. And if you build your house, especially on the Family Islands, and you have a breezeway underneath there, that is also going to be beneficial to you, because that will allow for the smooth movement of water if and when it does flood in your area. I would not encourage anyone to build in anywhere that is a particularly low land. We had just previously, we're talking about the wetland areas, and that we shouldn't fill those in. But we also have to be careful about the very few hills that we have as well. We should be careful not to cut into those hills.
But we did that.
We have done that.
You got Milo Butler Highway and all those things. So does that contribute to more flooding?
So when you cut into those hills, you allow the soil now becomes loose. You you remove the trees that were allowing the water to infiltrate into the soil. And so yes, you increase the potential for flooding in those kinds of areas, because now the water has nowhere to go but run off into the street, essentially.
But you know, we've noticed now, because you know, it used to be just, like you say, areas like Pinewood where there was flooding. But any rain now anywhere, and you're in trouble in Nassau.
Well, Nassau is 21 miles by 7 miles, and we have quite a few people living here. We have turned ourselves almost into a concrete jungle. with roads, with all the concrete infrastructure that we have. So a lot of the water that would have had space and room to run down or to accumulate elsewhere, we have developed those areas. And we have to ensure, a part of what our job is, and we work very well with the Ministry of Works, is to make sure that any new development, you account for your stormwater on your property, so that we avert or avoid having the increase in floods in our streets and into neighborhoods, so that people can't get past.
We were talking about EIAs.
Yes.
How many projects have you had to turn down?
We've turned down quite a few, actually. And I'm very proud to say that we're able to work with most developers to find a common ground or to find a middle ground. But for those projects where, you know, you're impacting acres and acres of wetland, and really there's almost no amount of jobs that you can get to replace the function of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres of wetlands. The Bahamas is on the front line of climate change, and we need these ecosystems to keep us as well as we can be kept with the impacts that we're expecting. So we've turned down quite a few. A number that is not on top of my head, but
I won't put you on that.
We've surely turned down quite a few, and then we have sent a few developers back to go and make adjustments. And then once you're able to get those adjustments, then come back and see us for another review.
Now, I remember there was, I think, some special sort of machines that we had that we put in certain areas of the country to actually indicate what sea level rise was. You could probably tell me what they're called.
So we've had some meters. This would have been mostly with the Department of Meteorology. We need to understand, and I do believe that science should be driving any kind of policy that we would seek to implement. We do need to understand what is happening in our ocean. We need to understand what is happening in our environments before we just make a decision as to, oh, this sounds good. So it needs to be, it needs to be good for the country. It needs to make sense for the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years. So we have some meters. We had a partnership recently with the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center that provided us with some early warning systems for our coral reefs as well as an indicator to what is going on with climate change. And so we have a number of these projects going on to help us to be able to use science and use numbers to be able to advise our political heads on what they should be doing.
I'm glad you brought up coral reefs, because they're exceptionally important to us, right?
Yes.
Right? And we had this thing, I can't remember what's it called, stony coral?
Skittle D, yes.
Right. Is that still a major, excuse me, is that still a major problem?
So we've had some reprieve with stony coral tissue loss disease, but we're not out of the woods. But the major thing that's been happening with our corals for the last 2 years is the increased temperature of our oceans. So this July was designated as the hottest July on record ever. And for the last year, we've had...
This July,
2024.
Hottest on record ever?
Ever. And so with the high atmospheric temperatures, that also translates into ocean temperatures. And so this July, our corals also experienced some bleaching as a result of the extreme heat. The same thing happened last year. So just as the corals were starting to recover, then we enter into this new heat wave in the ocean. And so we're waiting now to see how much of those corals are going to recover, but we're not sitting on our laurels as either. So we are working with coral scientists to see which corals are performing better in these heat and high stress environments, to see how we can assist them in continuing to grow. The ones that are able to tolerate the heat, we're going to help them to be able to grow and not copulate, corals don't copulate, but to multiply in the ocean, and so we can have these coral systems.
But for people that don't understand, why is coral so important?
Corals support fisheries, one. So all of the grouper, the snapper that we eat, those are coral reef fish. They live around corals. Corals are also a storm surge protector. So when we have these storm surges from big storms, hurricanes, the corals will take that initial beating So they will begin to stop the wave and slow the wave down. So the corals protect the infrastructure that is behind it, the roads, the houses, everything. And so if you lose corals, once the corals become white, once the corals begin to die, their structure...
So coral are naturally white?
No, they aren't naturally white.
So if you see white coral, there's something wrong with it?
It's sick or dead. So they're not white. So once they become white, they're very fragile because the living organism that was inside them has left it, and that relationship that they had to keep them strong has gone away. So if they are white and they're dying, they're not able to break the waves. There's nothing there for the fish that rely on them to come and eat and forage on. So the fish will leave. The fish will go somewhere else to where healthy coral are. And so we will lose our economic activity, and we also lose anything that would have been impacted by any storm surge because the coral is not able to do its work.
Now, because we're a big tourist thing, you know, and marinas are the thing. Everybody has to have a yacht. How detrimental is it to have a marina?
Well,
I mean, I'm against them, but...
It depends on where you place your marina.
Okay, go ahead.
So we do have some very deep water that is very close to our coastline that that you don't need to dredge to be able to bring in a big boat.
It's the dredging that's the problem.
Right. So we have developers to look into those areas to see if you can have your marina around your development in an area that you won't have to dredge, or the dredging is minimal, because dredging disrupts the ecosystem. And if there is coral in the ecosystem, of course, sometimes we have the developers to remove the coral and replant them, and then of course there is a monitoring plan that we ensure is followed after that. But if we don't have to touch these fragile ecosystems, it's best to leave them in place and let them do what it is that they need to do.
I'm going to bring up something that, you know, we've been hearing about some shark attacks lately. And of course, the Bahamas brags about being a great shark sanctuary. Did we do the right thing?
I've been also having these conversations. And Julian, a lot of people want us to just go out and kill the sharks. Sharks are top predators. Okay, sharks are there to make sure that everything remains in balance in our oceans. We've just finished talking about grouper and snappers. If you lose the sharks at the top, the shark populations also keeps these populations in check. And if you don't have balance in the ocean, just like in any other system, you will have chaos, okay?
But do we have too many sharks, or is it just the habits of humans that are causing sharks to come closer to the...
The data on the too many sharks is still outstanding. And so I will not say that we have too many sharks. The ocean is the shark's environment. And so when we go into the ocean, we have to understand a few things. Sharks are attracted, one, to blood. And so most tourists don't go into...
And that's a fact, because some people thought that that wasn't necessarily true.
No. Most tourists don't go into the water and have blood or fish dangling to attract a shark. And I think that I can safely say that we have more safe interactions in the ocean than we have had incidents with sharks or shark interactions. And so I think if we go into the water with an understanding that we're here on vacation, or for the Bahamas that go to bathe, it is a safe place.
That's their home.
But this is the shark's home. And if you see them, then remove yourself from the situation. Don't ever try to engage a shark, but there are some things that we can do. Do not ever put dead fish in the water to try to attract a shark. These are things that, if I remember correctly, these are against the law under the Department of Marine Resources. Chumming the waters. We can't do that, especially in areas where people bathe, and we know that people bathe because of the dangers that come with it.
So like fishing on the rocks, like a lot of people go to Saunders Beach and there's around there and just, they shouldn't do that.
We also encourage fishermen to keep a clean space, okay? Many fishermen, again, would go fish, clean out the fish, and then throw that back into the water. These are some of the things that attract sharks to the coastline. And so we encourage fishermen to try to keep a clean space, have a place to throw out the insides of your catch so that everybody is safe.
Good. We're going to have to take another little break, and we can talk a little bit more about sharks and some myths and how to deal with a shark if you come face to face with it. Right. Stay with us. We'll be back with more.
yeah. I like Johnny Cake, yeah. Where my fish do, what I don't need all that bird, that don't make a show, yeah. I like the beach, but I don't go in water. Just grab me a Colette, that's the bear of the Bahamas. I like to go down, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Our company offers a simple philosophy, open hands. What do open hands mean? If you keep your hands closed, nothing comes in, nothing goes out. If you keep your hands open, a lot of things comes in, a lot of things goes out. We cannot expect to be a successful company without blessing our community and blessing our country.
My good friend and valued client, Dominic Stirrup, approached me following a meeting we had and told me of the idea that he had of feeding 10,000 Bahamians on Thanksgiving.
There was a lot of details to put together, had to figure out how to get it done. But at the end, it was worth it. At the end, it gave me a heart of gratitude to know that our company is reaching out to so many persons.
We invite you on a journey to witness an extraordinary chapter in the story of the Bahamas Striping Group of Companies, a tale of compassion, unity, and the true spirit of Thanksgiving.
From June 1st to November 30th, the ZNS Radio and Television Network is the #1 source in the Bahamas for hurricane information before, during, and after a storm. Now is the time to choose your radio and television hurricane season ad packages. Get extra special rates and run the ads only when you want them to run. Call the ZNS sales office today at 502-3800.
Welcome back. Dr. Rihanna Neely Murphy is my special guest. And, you know, I must say this. I'm so proud of our Bahamian scientists. And there's so many of you now. Let's talk about careers, since I brought that up just now. What kind of careers are there for scientists in the marine, in the environmental field?
Well, we need scientists at the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection.
So we need even more than what we have.
We need even more than what we have. We brought on a cohort of 5 about 6 months ago. And
how large is your organization?
We have about 15 officers, 15 technical officers. And like I said, remember I said we cover the entire length and breadth of the Bahamas.
And how many applications do you get, like, on average per year?
Believe it or not, we don't get that many.
Really?
Because a lot of people, for whatever reason, I don't know if they're afraid of science, so they don't study science.
No, I didn't mean that. I meant applications for projects.
Oh, for projects. Large projects, we probably get about 20 large projects a year. And that may sound like a little, but
it seems like it's a lot.
It's quite a lot, because when projects come with a hotel component, they come with a marina component, they come with a golf course component. All of these things we have to check for.
So we're coming back to the EIA again.
To the EIA.
How long does it... Let's talk about all of the things that you have to consider when you're looking at an EIA.
So after we receive the initial application, we do something called a site visit. And so we would go out to the site and do a walkthrough of the site.
You and your 15 people?
Well, at least 2 or 3 of us would go out and do a walk of the site. At that point in time, we would advise the potential developer that you would need either a full environmental impact assessment. In some instances, if the site was already disturbed, you may need a smaller document called an environmental baseline assessment, which pretty much tells us, you know, what we met there, if there are invasive species, if there are protected species, and then you will outline what it is you need to do to handle these things. All projects need an environmental management plan. This is a document that outlines your day-to-day activities on the site. How are you going to deal with dust? How are you going to deal with your stormwater? How are you going to deal with noise? How are you going to deal with possible light pollution? All of these things are contained in the environmental management plan. Now, during the EIA process, there's a public consultation process. Once your EIA is approved by the department, you are given the okay to go to public consultation. By law, the public consultation notice should go out 14 business days before the date of the actual public consultation. Then there's the public consultation meeting. Sometimes the developer will have to go through more than one physical meetings, and they can be virtual as well. And so once we're completed with that, then you have 21 business days for the public to be able to give a response, voice their concerns, ask any questions, and we are responsible to respond to those in something called the amended or the revised environmental impact assessment. All of these documents are to be posted on the developer's website. We also have them posted on the DEPP's website. For the last, maybe last month or so, the department's website has been down due to some technical issues that we've been having, but it's now back up, and we're working to put...
What is your website? Just let people know in case they want to...
DEPP.gov.bs is the department's website, so that's Department of Environmental Planning and Protection.gov.bs, DEPP. So you can see a list of the approved environmental impact assessments that are up there.
Are a lot of Bahamians trying to invest in environmental projects here?
We don't see a lot of Bahamians, not in very big projects. We see some Bahamians coming up with small hotel projects now, Airbnbs, boutique hotels, but the large projects, the mega ones, they're usually international landowners.
I'm only smiling because I was thinking about something today that, you know, Infant View Road, Dean Street.
Yes.
Airbnbs.
Airbnbs.
They have to come to you?
Yes.
Really? So
yes.
No, if you're going to open an Airbnb, they have to come to you first?
Correct. So the legislation, the amendments to the legislation that we passed had a caveat. If your development is not within an environmentally sensitive area, and we define what an environmentally sensitive area is, you are not subject to the CEC rules, Certificate of Environmental Clearance. But if you're building something that is more than a sixplex, so this would, we realized that it was burdensome on those people that were just building a house. If you wanted to install a fence or do a renovation to your property. So for those people, as long as you're not in an environmentally sensitive area near a wetland, the coastline, the beach, anything like that, and it's in the amendment outlined very clearly, you're not subject to these regulations anymore. But for any kind of this commercial development, any kind of enterprise like that, you are still subject to it, and so you'll still have to go through this process.
Oh, that's interesting. Let's change it a little bit and go to careers. You've got a wonderful career, and you know I'm exceptionally proud of you. But what kind of careers are there in the environment?
So, I'm an environmental scientist. We have people in the department that study biology, people that study chemistry, study geography. All of these can be environmental officers. We need people who understand the environment well enough to write about it. We need environmental journalists. We need environmental economists.
And that's something, I mean, you know, I consider myself an environmental journalist, but very few...
It is a skill.
Very few people actually sort of venture into environmental work.
So we would encourage anyone that has an interest in the environment to think about anything that you can do, you can put environment in front of it. So you can be a lawyer. We need environmental lawyers.
Do we have many lawyers who are actually specializing in environmental laws?
We have lawyers within the AG's office that are responsible for environmental law, but I cannot say that they would have studied environmental law. Yes. So if you're interested, if you're in law school right now and you're interested in the environment, there's a career. We don't have enough lawyers. I'm always asking, can we get? And so anything that you can do, you put environment in front of it, and it's a career, and we need it.
Now, I know a lot of NGOs deal with kids because they go into the schools. Does DEP do that?
Yes. This year was the first time we actually had a career fair. We brought in all of the environmental consultants, all of the NGOs to one spot, and we invited all of the schools to come and attend. We intend to do it again next year because we realized that the earlier we get a new set of people interested in the environment, the better off we all will be. I used to teach at the University of the Bahamas, and many of the officers that we have are some of my students. And they all would speak about how enjoyable the classes were because you're not speaking about, or you're making it real for people. And so a part of what our job is to make environment not just something that is out there, but something that is real, something that you look at and you see, well, this pine tree is actually having an impact on my existence, and here is how. And so that is what we pride ourselves on in the department. We're going into the schools, we're going to find the students where they are, and to make them understand that this is not only a career. We like to tell them that it is a lot of fun. You get to do a lot of traveling, and the pay isn't half bad.
So you can make a good living.
You can make a decent living.
Now, listen, remember, I guess it's about 10, 15 years ago now, when they took down all those casuarina trees on Saunders Beach, and everybody had the tizzy. But do we know that there's been a major benefit? Because they're invasive.
Yes.
Has there been a major benefit without them since we've done that, or?
So since the removal of the casuarinas, what we always encourage whenever you remove an invasive tree species is that you put back in vegetation that will stabilize the soil. So what we've noticed is that...
A native.
A native, right. Yes. So after they did that, they would have introduced native vegetation to stabilize the soil, and we have seen now that the need for putting in sand or the need for the road repair, etc., has decreased. Those casuarinas, those root systems grow very wild and very long. And very fast. And so they were interrupting the roads, and they were also interrupting the beach system, the sand dune system. We need that as well. That is a part of our coastal ecosystem that protects the infrastructure behind it. So when we damage a sand dune, a lot of people and developers too want to come and build right in the sand dune. We have to protect those ecosystems. And so you can't build in the sand dune. You can build behind the sand dune, and we'll work with you to make sure you do it properly.
Now, say I'm a little gardener. What kind of good native plants should I actually put in my yard? What's a good Bahamian thing, and what is also invasive?
We encourage people to plant fruit trees, actually. I do remember a time when trees were lined with fruits. We, talking about climate change, food security may be a problem for the Bahamas, could be a major problem for the Bahamas. We need to start to think about all of these trees. My grandfather said to me before he died a couple years ago that he is planting these trees and he knows that he will never eat from them.
Wow. He did it for the future.
But he did it for the future. And so we have to think not just about ornamental trees and making our yards look pretty, but we have to think about what it is that we need, what will grow well. So plant those things like sapodilli, plant your pears, plant your plums, plant limes. These are kind of things that are native to this area and that will grow well. Don't look for plants that need a lot of watering because we're looking at potentially having drought periods. We haven't gotten to the point like California where you have to have a schedule of when you can use water. But as climate change becomes more and more of a problem, these are not things that are outside of the realm of possibilities for the Bahamas.
So we don't know exactly how climate change is really going to affect us? We only know some things?
We do know, but it's the timing of it. When will these impacts happen? We know that in the northern and in the central Bahamas, we will expect more rain. We cannot predict when the rain will come, but we know that when the rain comes, it's going to come plentiful. It's going to be a lot of rain. We know that in the southern Bahamas, that there's going to be more and more droughts. And so even when they get rain events, those will have a negative impact because it's so dry. But so these are things that we know that are going to happen. We're just, I don't want to say just waiting for it to happen, but
now, of course, anyone in Grand Bahama or Abaco who went through Dorian knows. You ain't got to convince them, but right? They know. Do you see in the next, say, 20 years, if things do not change, that we would have to evacuate our country? Do you see that happening?
So, and
I mean New Providence even.
Under the negotiations that we're participating in, there is something called a business as usual scenario. Under the business as usual scenario, we are expecting that sea level rise will impact the Bahamas by a full meter within the next.
So that's 3.5 feet.
Correct.
Wow.
And what we know about the sea level is if if that happens, our tides again will be higher. Any storms that we have, the storm surge on top of the higher sea levels will be even higher and more devastating. So if we continue on this track as a globe, as a planet, business as usual, nobody changes their behavior, nobody does anything to address the climate crisis, then that is the potential for the Bahamas, especially in some of these lower lying islands. Especially if there is a storm, you may not be able to return as quickly as you would have without it.
Well, we have to take one more break, and we'll be back right after this. Stay with us. We're going to talk about the future of environmental negotiations, let's say. Yeah.
That's the bear of the Bahamas. I like to go down. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What does disability look like? In a busy airport terminal? At the check-in counter? At security checkpoints? Or even in baggage claim? Passengers with hidden disabilities often go unnoticed. Globally, 1 in 7 persons have some form of a disability. 80% of those disabilities are non-visible. In an airport environment, workers are often unaware of hidden physical, mental, or neurological disabilities that some passengers live with. This can lead to frustration and a less than ideal travel experience. So, how do we make the invisible more visible? At LPIA, we've implemented the Sunflower Lanyard program. The lanyards are visual cues for airport workers to immediately identify passengers who might need additional assistance. NAD is teaming up with the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities and key stakeholders at LPIA to launch the internationally recognized initiative. We're joining more than 180 airports and 26 countries already in the program. NAD is the first organization in the Bahamas to recognize the Sunflower Initiative. It's a way to show our continued commitment to making LPIA a safe, welcoming, and inclusive airport for all. Passengers needing to secure a free Sunflower lanyard can email sunflower@nas.bs or call 1242-397-8600. For more information, visit www.nassauLPIA.com.
Welcome back. Now, I can call you Rihanna because you're my friend. But, you know, in 1989, I was sent to Madrid to, along with Dr. Donald Cooper, to do something, to sort of follow something that was called the Convention on Biological Diversity. And we was all trying to figure out what that is.
What is that?
I think we have a better understanding of it now. But explain what that is and explain how the two, that and climate change, work together, please.
So the Convention on Biological Diversity is one of the Rio conventions, is what they call them.
Right.
So you have climate change, you have this one, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and you have the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention, and the Convention on Desertification. The BRS, what we call it, Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm, are on chemicals and mercury. But the one that we're talking about, biological diversity, is very important to the Bahamas because the Bahamas is one of those biodiversity hotspots. We have quite a few species, birds, trees, insects that are only found in the Bahamas. And so we have to take...
Really?
Yes.
Only in the Bahamas?
Only in the Bahamas. We call them endemic species. So when they're only found in the area that we see them, they're called endemic. And so we have quite a few of them, and some of them are endangered. And what that means is that they are at risk for not being on the planet anymore. Wow. At risk for us never seeing them again. And what I think is more critical is recently scientists have found a species to be extinct that we didn't even know existed. And I think that is one of the saddest things that can ever happen.
What is that? Which one?
This was they found a frog in the Amazon that they did not know. They found a fossil of a frog that they didn't know ever existed. And I said, well, you know, we'll never get a chance to learn anything about this animal.
Definitely not in the Bahamas. No. You throw a box of molten salt on that.
Right. So, well, something like we have to be careful as well with the things that we try to kill in our country, because, like I said, many of them are endemic, only found here, and you never know if you don't understand what the species is. If this is endangered, you may be contributing to the extinction of a species.
But you know something? Speaking about frogs, I hadn't seen frogs in a long time.
No?
No, but guess what? I saw one the other day.
I have about 3 of them living in my screen door.
And what I like, I'm seeing a lot of birds now coming around. I'm not sure what kinds of birds are. They're big black birds, even stork-like birds. That's a good sign when and I'm seeing butterflies again.
Yes. So what we should know. So
does that mean is that the whole ecosystem is getting richer?
Well, things are coming back into balance. Okay, we talked about balance quite a bit tonight, and we need to maintain balance. What we should know is that all birds in the Bahamas are protected. I don't think that people... All. I don't think people go around trying to shoot birds or anything. Hopefully we don't do that. But even those seagulls that are such a nuisance to us when we go to eat our food on the beach, those are all...
They're protected.
Those are all protected.
So it's illegal to actually kill...
Don't fool with that.
Wow.
So, and there are some birds that have a hunting season that the forestry unit within our Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, are responsible for. The white-crowned pigeon goes through a hunting season, and there are quite a few other ones that they monitor. And I think that they're working on, you know, more of the regulations to ensure that those birds that we are able to hunt, that we're able to hunt them into the future. So the Convention on Biological Diversity is very important for us. We had officers that just came back from the Conference of the Parties. This is the meeting of all the nations on this COP. And we have to do stock takes very regularly.
And you mentioned COP. COP is coming up this month or next month?
The climate change COP is coming up. I think the team from the Bahamas is already en route. The Prime Minister is going to follow with his cabinet delegation.
What are we going to push for beyond climate change?
Well, climate change is very important to the Bahamas. And we're still looking for the capitalization of something called the Loss and Damage Fund.
Right.
The countries that should have put money into the Loss and Damage Fund have put a few $100 million in there. But I just want to put that few $100 million into perspective. We were supposed to receive $100 billion per year.
From?
From the developed world to address climate change.
How much have they given us?
Not a fraction, not even a quarter of that has been received. And from the assessments that we have done...
And this is something they agreed to?
That they have agreed to, yes. So from the assessments that we have done, we anticipate that our climate change bill, not considering any kind of storm or anything, but this is just your regular adaptation and mitigation actions, will take us to about $4 billion. Okay, and that is money that is not included in the Bahamas' budget. However, there are things that we can surely do as a nation. We need to find our allies in the space, those that have funds and are willing to assist us. The Bahamas is considered a medium to high level income country, so we don't qualify for a lot of the overseas development assistance.
Yeah, they keep using that excuse.
They keep using that excuse, but we are very highly vulnerable to climate change. So just as if there is a disaster in your house, you will not wait on anybody to come and assist you. You will do what it is that you have to do within your power to assist yourself. And these are the plans that the government has to address climate change within its own borders are what we are doing to help ourselves.
Now, we got 5 minutes left, but let's talk about plastics and bottles. I mean, personally, I can't throw anything out of my car.
Don't do that.
That would kill me.
Yes.
And it doesn't take much to just wait till you get to, even if it's just like you go to the gas station and drop it in there.
Throw it in there.
Right? But how dangerous are plastics and bottles to the environment?
So, again, I just had an officer to come back from Morocco on a microplastics training. So microplastics are those tiny, tiny plastics that we cannot see. And they float around in our oceans. And they're also being found now in the tissue of fish.
So we're eating plastic.
We're eating fish.
We're eating plastic.
We're eating plastic.
The plastic that we throw in the water.
The plastic that you threw. Maybe you were sitting on the beach having your KFC with a bottle of water or whatever it was, and you just left that on the beach. That is going to end up in the ocean. It will eventually disintegrate, become smaller and smaller and smaller until you cannot see it anymore, and fish will consume it. You will consume the fish. You will consume that plastic.
Because how many years does it take for plastics to degrade again?
200 years. So every piece of plastic that has ever been made is still on the planet.
Wow.
Plastics are a byproduct of the fossil fuel industry. Big fossil fuel companies had a lot of wastage, and they had to figure out, well, what are we going to do with all of this extra stuff as a result of us refining this fossil fuel, and plastic was the result. And so around the 1930s and 1940s is when we came up with this wonderful idea. Plastics are very beneficial.
Yeah, but they're killing us too.
I can't see a hospital running without plastics. Our
can't
needles,
see anything running without
needles are the bags that they have the saline in. All of those things are plastics. But these single-use plastics, the single-use plastics that we're using, and the larger plastics that are not disposed properly are killing us.
We only have about 2 or 3 minutes left. I'd like for you to take a look in the camera and tell Bahamians what they could do to make their own lives better and improve the environment.
Well, I would encourage every Bahamian to be conscious, one, about what the environment is, what it means to you. The environment, all of the trees that we see outside, the smells that we get, all of these are building a better quality of life for you. And so it's important that you take care of it. To Julian's point about throwing your garbage outside of your car, no Bahamian should ever do that. These things lead to health crises that we're unable to afford. When the place is dirty, you see the infestation of roaches, of rats, of things that we don't want to be in our place. And these animals carry diseases. And diseases, nobody wants to be sick or be bitten by a rat or have these things running around. On the climate change and biodiversity front, I really want us to pay attention to our purchases. Make sure that you know and understand where your items come from. If you're able to reuse an item more than once, twice, 3 times before you throw it away, do that. It can help you to save some money. And I would encourage all of the young people, all of those young at heart, all of those that still have a mind and think you can study this stuff. We need your assistance, as the Bahamas is on the front line of all of these crises. Pollution, biodiversity, climate change. We just came out of COVID. So we need the help of every Bahamian, of every resident to help us on all of these fronts.
Again, I'm so proud of you. You need a lot of support. You know, I'm here for you. And keep doing the great work that you do.
Thank you very much.
Let's make the Bahamas better. And that's something we can all do. But have a good evening. And next week, Clint Watson will be back. Thank you for putting up with me. And thanks to the entire team here. Good night.
At Centerville, I'm LaDawn Davis.